We learned about when do you make your own bakoshes in tefillah. So we had Nachama Madi first. So this is not working over here. Not working out over here. We had first the sheet of Rav Nachman Madi says you should say it in Shemei Tefillah, and then we had a machlokes between a Rishon and Belazar if you're supposed to ask before or after davening. Or Rabbi Shua said we learned from Moshe. Moshe first did the siach, did the regular tefillah. He said Atachiloisa first, and then he davened. Rabbi Belazar said Moshe because shiny Moshe the Rav Guvrei. And Rashi told us that it's Mechzik Yura. If we look at the Rashi of the second line of the Chesed Aleph, it says Gedulas Maisav V'Chachmasoi Rabba. The goddess of Moshe Rabbeinu was great, and therefore v'no loy l'shabeich ulahadif v'shvach l'shal melech malchem lochem. It's appropriate for Moshe to elaborate on the shvach of the Rebbeinu Shalom and then get into his own bakashas. It looks like he's trying to suck up to the Rebbeinu Shalom so that he'll get his bakasha answered. Better take care of your own bakasha first. So how did this start? Yesterday was beat up for Nacham Hamadi Day. And everything that Nacham Hamadi said was challenged. Who says such a thing? The Gemara brought down that one thing he said wasn't challenged, is accepted, and that is that you should be shoyel tzrachav v'shemei tefillah. So the Gemara said over there, that's not Nacham Hamadi. The reason why over there we didn't beat up Nacham Hamadi is because he was totally himself an ashli rafavi, meaning he was leaning on the great pillars, the great trees of the Chachamim who said shoyel adam tzrachav v'shemei tefillah. Zog tehid Gemara weiter. Amar Rabbi Yehuda bar Rav Shmuel bar Shiloi mishmei derav. Even though we say that you could be shoyel your personal things in Shemei Tefillah, however, in each bracha, if you have a bakasha relevant that negate to that specific bracha, like you want to daven for a choyled rufa'enu, you want to daven for pranos and baruch aleinu, that's appropriate as well. Amar Rabbi bar Ashi Amar Rav Afa Bisha Amru Shoyel Odom Trachav B'Shemei Tefillah Im Yesh Leichoyle B'Sech Beisai Omer B'Birchas Choylem Im Tzarech L'Farnasa Omer B'Birchas Hashanim. Now, though the poskim say yes, you can do this, don't make a habit out of it. Occasionally, you can add your own tefillas in, but it shouldn't be done on a regular basis because then you're like changing the matbeya of the tefillah. Amar B'Shu Ben Levi Afa Bisha Amru Shoyel Odom Trachav B'Shemei Tefillah. If you wanted to add a tchina in after your tefillah, you could add as much as you want. So after davening, you can add as much as you want. During davening, during the tefillah, keep it to a minimum. Tosfos brings up a minhag that I never heard of. Maybe if anybody heard of this minhag, please tell me. Tosfos says in Ba loimer achet tefillasei af kesedi yom kippurim. Omer mashma apol be'emtet tefillasei loy. You should not add anything in the middle of your tefillah. Zok Tosfos, what about the minhag? Umashen hago ata betanyos beis v'heishen hagen laharich bepsuke derachmei uvesliches bebirches lachlanu. Zok Tosfos, there's a minhag by us where during the bracha of slachlanu, when they say sliches, they add a whole bunch of tchinas, which you don't do. Equal member, the tzibur is shiny. A tzibur could add in, but the yochid shouldn't. Midi da havaha damrinon al yishal adam trachav loy b'gil b'rishonis v'loy b'gil achraynis. We know during the first three and last three brachos, you don't ask for your eigen zaken. But on Purim, we say a krevis to Purim, even in those brachos. We do stick in a tchina. So kum techois, so techois could be a rabbin, could be different, but a yochid shouldn't. I never heard of that minute. I never saw it anywhere. Did anyone never hear such a thing? The by shlichus they add into the brachos lachlanu. And the by us, if anyone tried to by us, Moshe would scream, he's got us.
It stands to reason that it would be the opposite. Privately, you could do it, but publicly, you shouldn't do it because it would be publicly changing the structure, right?
Yeah, I hear. Yeah. But I never even ever heard of such a thing. Okay, Zok to Gemara. Zok to Elu Eidin Shel Oivdik Gechavim. Just a little bit of a chazara. What are the Yom Tovim of the Oivdik Gechavim? Kalanda, Visat Renura, Vikartisim. The Gemara is going to explain and give us a little history of what these Yom Tovim are. The Yom Genusya Shel Malchayim, the day that their kings were anointed, or special days for them, and the Gis changes to Malachim, not Malchayim. The Yom HaLeida and the birthdays for Yom HaMisa of the kings. Divir Meir. The Chachamim told Misa. Some kings, when they died, they burnt up all of his possessions. And that was a ceremony in which they would make the king into a getchke. So that's why there's a problem with it. But if they're not burning his possessions, meaning they're not declaring him as a getchke, ein ba avodas kacham. This practice, believe it or not, I was listening to Dr. Henry Abramson. He said this practice started in the days of Julius Caesar. They burnt all of his things to try to make a getchke out of him, and that became the norm by big kings. When they would die, they would make him into a getchke, and the ceremony involved burning all their possessions. I guess, like, since they're so important, no one should be able to use their personal effects. I guess they didn't take haircuts enough. So the day someone would cut his beard, which is a little yom to him, or Yosy, they used to cut their hair in the front, but let it grow long in the back. But from time to time they would trim it. That's also a little party for them. Or if someone was traveling in the yam, he's in a sakana, and now he's back on dry land, so he makes a little bit of a celebration. Or the day that someone gets out of jail. These are al goyim, of course. Or a guy that made chasana. That day, it's only also that day, not 3 days before. You're allowed to do business with him every day except for that day. And only that person. A stranger doesn't have any Yom Tov because a total stranger had one of these events. It's funny because the goyim make a party when they take a haircut. I think my wife makes a party when I finally take a haircut as well. Everyone complains that I wait too long. Zok to Gemara weiter. Amar Rav Chanan bar Rava. Kalanda. What is kalanda? It's ches yomim acher tkufa. It's the first 8 days of the winter season. Sat Renura is ches yomim lifnei tkufa. It's 8 days, the last 8 days of the fall season. V'simanech. How do you know in the Mishnah, when the Mishnah lists off Kalanda, Mr. Truna, so Kalanda really is Yom Tov that's later than Satranur, because Satranur is before the end of the fall season, and Kalanda is the first 8 days of the new winter season. So in order to be able to know which is which, when you learn our Mishnah and remember it, is V'simanech Ochar V'kedem Tartani. That pasuk says first the later one, and then the earlier one. So that's how the Tana presents the order of these Yomim Tovim in the Mishnah. Tanarban, Adam Rishon. Where did these Yomim Tovim come from? Adam Rishon saw Yom Shemismait V'Hoylech. As the winter season came, the days were getting shorter and shorter. Amar, he said, Oidli, the world must be coming to an end. Shema b'shvil sasarachti, v'balt I did my chet, oilam chashuch bati. The world is getting darkened. And it's going to revert back to Soyev Avoyu, and the world will be destroyed. So he panicked. V'zuhi misa sheniknas alayim in hashemayim. And this is the misa that was niknas alayim in hashemayim when I was over the aver of the Eitzadas and I was thrown out of Kedeten. So therefore he panicked. Amad v'yoshav ches yomim b'tainis u'b'tfilah. So those last 8 days of the fall season, where the days are getting shorter and shorter, Adam sat b'tainis u'b'tfilah. Even Shirat Kufas Teves, Vroyim Shemarch Voilech. But once the winter season started, and now the days were starting to get longer, Omar, he said, I'm in Hagoy Shal Oilamhu, it's cyclical. That's how it works. The days are longer in the summer and the shorter in the winter. My panic was in vain. So he got very happy that now the world is not coming to an end. So Halach Ba'asa Shmoina Yomim Toivim. He made 8 days. L'shana Acheres. The next year, Asan la'elu ula elu yom tovim. So the first year, only the 8 days after the winter started, when he saw the days were getting longer, then he celebrated. But the next year, he even celebrated the last 8 days of the fall season that he was panicked about last year. This year, he already knew it was cyclical, so he made both days. So both sets of 8 days were a yom tov. That's a good thing. So therefore, Asan la'elu elu yom tovim. Who covered L'Shem Shemayim? He was kaveh these 8 days L'Shem Shemayim. But the Goyim liked the party, liked the Yom Tov, and they did it L'Shem Avoda Kachav. And Dr. Abramson describes, and I strongly recommend listening to a video it's a YouTube video, it's not a video, it's just audio, from Reb Kellerman, who goes through the history of Kratzvach. This was a pagan holiday, long before anything happened with Christianity. And it was total hefkeris and vilkite during these 8 or 16 days. People would shikazech and go wild and violate any woman. Women couldn't walk on the streets. It was so bad. It was complete hefkeris and vilkite. And what happened is Christianity wasn't so popular. And they were trying to get people in. Now, really, if you look into the history, Yoshka's birth is nowhere near December. Yoshka's birth is closer to the spring and summer. But the Christians wanted to get all of these pagan people who like to party that way into the religion. So they decided to make their Yom Tov during that period of time, because this way it would gain popularity. So, if you listen to Rabbi Kellerman, the history of Kratzmach is all of the minhagim that they do on Kratzmach are all based on different pagan groups that they were trying to invite him into Christianity. And they say, okay, yeah, you want Vilkite Hefkeris? All that? We have that too. We offer that too. Whatever you want, we have it as well. Come to us. And eventually, when the Protestants got more powerful, they felt that it wasn't becoming to have such a geferliche Hefkeris. It was not a child or family-friendly type of Yom Tov at all. It was triple X-rated. And they decided that it's not appropriate for our religion, so it got a little bit toned down. It's still not so but it's not complete, dangerous, wild of chaos. And that's how it has sort of evolved throughout the generations. If you hold the world was created in Tishrei, then all he saw was from Tishrei, from Yom Tov, from the Yom Tovim. All you see is the days getting shorter and shorter. You don't see the cycle. So it makes sense that he panicked. If the world was already created back in Nisan, so he saw long days. He saw that the days were very long in the summer, and now they're getting shorter. So he sees the cycle. So what was he panicked about? I'm sorry? Oh, and for the Gemara, he didn't realize that it's going to get so short days. Yes, they were longer, and he knew they would get shorter because he saw they were getting longer. But when he saw that they were getting so short that even at 5 o'clock it was dark already, he thought it was going to lead to the world ending. But in fact, that's not what happened. As soon as the sun went down that first day, Omri said, "Oili, woe is to me, since I did an affair, the world became dark, and now it seems like v'yachser oilam l'seiv avoyu." And Zui Misa, sheniknasa alay min hashemayim. So Hayoshev v'tainus u'boicha kol halayla. He was crying all night. The Chava boicha kenegdoi, and Chava was crying with him. Kivin shol amur hashachar. But once daybreak came, Omar, he said, "Oh, min hagay shalolimhu." It's the normal. The first day Adam was around, he didn't know that it turns dark at night, so he panicked. But when the morning came, he got very happy. Omar v'hikriv. What did he bring as a carbon? A shor. He brought a shor. Shekarnov kodim lefarsoisov. When the shor enters a room, its horns are the first thing that enter the room. Remember, we had in the Gemara, when someone goes into a Beis Hamanuga, the first thing that'll enter the room is his nose, right? And remember, we were medayik, vaistachos, not his belly. Vaistachos, your belly shouldn't stick out further than your nose. So here, by an animal, by a shor, the first thing that enters the room, when the shor enters the room, is the horns. Shenemar vatitav lashem mishor par. Kodesh Baruch Hu likes the carbon of a shor. Makrin mafris, meaning the horns come first. It was actually a unicorn. Makrin mafris. Where do you see one horn? Makrin is tartimash. Makron without a yud, makrin siv. So basically, what Agamor is saying is that makron is a shor. He's a behemoth. So I was wondering, what is this? Why is it important? Yes, the Rebbe Shalom likes the Karen. Clearly, it says Makan Mafresh. That's how Adam Marisha knew to be Makan Bashar. But why Taka? Does the Rebbe Shalom like this feature that the horn comes first? So I think we could say, Zoe. I think Reb Schwab asked. I think this is Reb Schwab. He asked, "Vos epis on Rosh Hashanah we blow the shofar." We know it's to remember the Eloi Shel Yitzchak. So why don't we have like a Korban Pesach? We should all have a roasted ayil Rosh Hashanah by night. Vos epis the horn. What's interesting to point out is the only part of the animal that's not brought onto the mizbeach by a korban is the horn. So there's no shaykhs to the korban. So why is the horn the big deal on Rosh Hashanah? Why don't we say you do some other thing to commemorate the korban, the Eilush Shagir? That's what the Schwab asks. So I know this is a horny question, but Al Kalponim, he says something very beautiful. What happened? What does the Torah tell us about the horn of the ram? It was tangled up in the svach, and the animal couldn't come. The ayil couldn't come to Avram Avinu because he was tied up in the horns. That represents us Yidden every day, the struggles that we have to control our Yetzer Hara and the struggles that we have to do the mitzvahs. And there's nothing more beautiful to the Rebbeinu Shalom than seeing Klal Yisrael struggle and fight and not give up to beat the Yetzer Hara. If everything's going smooth and easy, sure the Rebbeinu Shalom likes someone who's not from Chet. But the Rebbeinu Shalom has a special honor when he sees the Yidden are struggling but fighting to be able to be Erlich Yidden. That's so beautiful by the Rebbeinu Shalom, and that's why the Karen represents that, because that's what the ayil was cut up with. So it could be that's the my love Karen.
But obviously, so
the Rebbeinu Shalom is horn.
I'm sure this thing only has one horn. It's not a move.
That I don't know. Rav Masne, it's a boy Rav Masne. Roimi she'asasa kalanda v'chol has yaris hasmuchos lo mishtabus lo. So in Rome, they kept that Yom Tov lechatchila. The cities around it that were meshubah to it, that serviced it, that pay taxes to Rome, they didn't really care for that Yom Tov. So the question is, those cities, are you allowed to do business with them 3 days before Yom Tov or not? And Rashi explains, to pay tax, and to bring whatever they need. They don't really have this wild party. So the question is, the Nema will say, since they're Meshubah to Rome, Yesh Loimer Mashen Koyin Achshav Yaviu L'Roimi La'Krivan B'nei Roimi. they're going to bring these karbanos, they're going to bring them to the Romans, and then the Romans are going to use them for Avodah Zara. Would that be a problem or not? Now, this actually opens up a huge shaila, because we learned originally that one of the possible reasons the Gemara tells us for not being able to do business with them 3 days before is lifnei iver l'shita michshol. So there's a big shaila if there's a din of lifnei iver when you're being machshol a goy with an aver. There's a big shaila about it. There are those who say it's only midrabana, and they bring a raya that there is an isser, because remember we had an example of lifnei iver, somebody who's moishit iver menachai to a goy, right? So if there's no lifnei iver by a goy, the Brisa clearly says there is, but they learned it's only midrabana. Over here, the problem is, Rabbi Kivega points out, this is not even lifnei iver, this is lifnei de lifnei. You're doing business with those cities that are meshubit, and they're going to deliver it to the goyim in Rome, and then they're going to use it. So it's a lifnei de lifnei. Would there even be a halacha lifnei iver over there?
Thank you, a customer of yours, a gift certificate, like one of these lobster boys. You know, they can be on favor. They eat the lobster like why?
I hear. I don't know. Rabbi Shubin Levi Amar. Rabbi Shubin Levi says, "Kalanda asura lakoilhi." Kalanda is also for everybody. And Rabbi Yochanan Amar ein asura elaloiv de'elvad, only for the Romans. So you have a machlokes as to whether or not you would be able to do business with them. Zok Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, that it's not also to the others. He atzma eina surah elalevdel. He atzma, Rashi teaches kol atzma shel iser. The main iser of doing business with a goy before kalanda is only la'avdel bilvad for the Romans, not for the cities around that are meshubim. Sat Renalia and Kartasim and the Yom Genusio shel Machem, the Yom Shehumlach by Melech. Lefon of Osir, the 3 days before, it's also to do business with them, but Achar of Mutter, afterwards you're allowed. And the guy that made a wedding for his son, Ein Osir Ella Oisa Yoim, it's only Osir that day, the Oisa Ish. Of course, you're not allowed to do business with that guy, but with some other guy who's not celebrating his son's chasna, there's no restriction. Omer Vashi Afana Nami Tanina, we also have a riot to this. The Gatani we learned. Yom taglach haziknoi uvelurisoy, v'yom she'olo b'minayam, v'yom she'yotza boy m'beis hasurim, ein aser ela oisei hayoim, v'oisei ha'ish. They take out the word b'lvad. Ela oisei hayoim v'oisei ha'ish. It's only aser to that person. Frank the Gemara, let's think about this. Vishlim oisei hayoim, I understand why the Bryce has to mention oisei hayoim. Lafuke lefana v'la'achra. To tell us that you're allowed to do business with him the day before and the day after, just not that day itself. Why is it Bryce saying it's only Osir La'Oisai Yesh? You're not going to think somebody else should. Why would somebody else have an Avodah Zara on the day that he didn't get a haircut? On the day it wasn't Oidam Niyam. Yeah, there was Oidam Niyam. So why do I need a Mishnah even to mention Oisai? It's Pshita.
Yeah, they knew they were going to stay. It was 400 years.
Are you talking to me? I guess not. Okay.
No, sorry about that, Yosy. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Well, it says lafuke my love lafuke mishabd of shmamina. So when it says oisei, it's saying, let's say this person who's making a party because his son's getting married because his hair was cut, right? Maybe if someone is meshubah to that guy, he's avodim, people who are meshubah to him, maybe there's a prohibition to do business with them as well. Shmamina, only the person himself. So we have a raya. So too, when you're talking about the cities around Rome that are meshubah to Rome but don't actually celebrate the Yom Tov, you'd be able to do business with them as well. Tani Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Yisrael shebechutz la'aretz, Yidin that are in chutz la'aretz, oivdei avodas kechovim b'taharhe. The avodas kechovim there is b'tahara. What does it mean b'tahara? There's Avodah Zara without kavana, and they don't realize it. What does that mean? Imagine a guy makes a chasen. The zimein kala Yehudim shebeirei, and he invited all of the Yidden in the city. Even though they have their own kosher caterer. So all their food and drink are from a kosher caterer. They even have their own shamas, their own wait staff. Nevertheless, so you're thinking, what could possibly be wrong with attending such a wedding? It's as if they ate from zivchei mesim, which is a reference to Avoda Zara. He will call to you, and you will eat from his Avoda Zara. The problem is you bring oichel mizivchei. Here you're not eating mizivchei. You're eating kosher food that's separate from the food served to the guy. Amarava, imkain name kra v'achalta mizivchei. That's all it should say. My v'karalacha. This the Torah says v'karalacha. It means that mishash kriya. The moment they call you, it's also just to even participate. Like Rashi mashma. Even if you're eating kosher and everything's fine, but if he called you to a party that's Avoda Zara, that's also going to be usher. And if you eat from that party, a Kodesh Baruch Hu considers it like you ate from Avoda Zara. Therefore, this also involves a very big shaila halacha. A lot of shittas about this. Well, let's finish the sugya first. Kol Tlos and Yoimin, 30 days after the chasana, where people are still actively celebrating. I guess they have a longer than Sheva Rachas. Vein Amar Le Machmas Hilula. Sai, if in the invitation he says, "Come, I'm inviting you to a dinner specifically to celebrate my children's wedding." Uvein Lo Amar Le Machmas Hilula. Or if he just said, "I'm inviting you to dinner," and he didn't specify it's to celebrate the wedding, Osir it will be Osir. However, Mikan Veilach, once 30 days have already passed since the wedding, then if he says this is also part of the extended wedding celebration, then it will be usher to attend. Then it will be shari. Let's say he says it is for the wedding. How long after the wedding will it still be prohibited just because he's saying this is an extended wedding celebration? 12 months. 12 months from the wedding. If he says it's related to the wedding, it's still going to be considered a suza by Zara. Past 12 months, even if he says it's for the wedding, it's not connected anymore. Zok to Gemara umeikara me'emasaser, and before Hoidim sheyachnas is his story, right? The pre-party, how long before is it also? Amar Papa Shidirava michirami saira ba'asinti. And that means when they put the barley into the water to start soaking them to create beer, that's already the preparation for the wedding, and that's when it will already be usher. Tosfos didn't make beer with barley in those days; they made it with tamar markashois. The Tosfos says, I like Rashi's second shot, and what it means is they would plant barley when a couple would get engaged, and then it would grow very quickly. So for the wedding, they would show that barley, and they would say, just like this barley grew quickly, so too your family should grow quickly. So that's what it's referring to. Shari, are you saying it's mutter? For he did come to a goyish party after 12 months. And he heard that they were made, that this is for the getchke to celebrate the wedding. Upirish, and he stopped eating. He didn't eat. So you see, even past 12 months is a problem. So Shani Rabbi Yitzchak Beredevar Misharsha the Adam Chashuv. And Rashi says it's not that he has to have a higher standard because he's an Adam Chashuv. No, Rashi, since he's not Adam Chashuv, it's a great honor to the host, to the guy that he came to join. And if that's the case, he's going to especially be Mishabech his Getchke. Look, this God Ladar came to my party, so that's why it's avodah zarah. So the Gemara, the Rishonim have a very big discussion if you're allowed to go to the Goyish parties. So right off the bat, they bring a raya that you should be allowed to, because even the Adam Godler Yitzchak Breder Sharsha went. When he heard the feish that the guy was model of avodah zarah, so that's when he stopped eating. But you see, he went. So that's one of the rise, but there's a multiple way machloikis about whether or not you're allowed to go or not. Okay, talk to more about it. Talk to more about it. The kartisim. My kartisim. What is this Yom Tov kartisim? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, it's Yom Shetafsa Boy Roy Me Malchus. It's the day that Rome seized the Malchus. They had a war and they seized the Malchus. Shenil Chamu Im Yevonim. They fought with the Greeks. The Roman fought with the Greeks. The Natzchum, and they conquered the Greeks. Umolchay b'chalolim, and that's when they took over the world. So Yom Shetafsa Boy Roy Me Malchus. Straight from us, that's so. But Tarna Kartasim V'Yom Shetafsa Boy Roy Me Malchus. We have a bride that says Kartasim and the day that Rome became powerful. Mishmash Kartasim is something else. Yosy, you're right. State Tfisos Tafsa Roy Me. The Roman had two conquests. Achas b'mei Cleopatra Malchusa, the Achas Shetafsa b'mei Yevonim. So when it says Kartasim, the Yom Shetafsa by Rami Malchus, Kartasim is referring to Yemei Cleopatra, and Yom Shetafsa by Rami Malchus is referring to the Yevonim. The Chiyasa and Tosha says the Lashon Kartasim means the dual chap, the second. It's like the second coming, the second conquest. That's what it means. The Chiyasa Rav Dimi Omar Klassen Utrain Kravi, 32 wars of Du Raimoi Bada Yonoi or Yovanoi Lo Yachluluhu. They fought 32 wars and they were not able to conquer Greek. Adish Tefinu Li Yisrael Badayu, until they took the Yidden as partners. They ganged up. We know that the Jews were fighting the Greeks, right? The Chashmonaim were fighting the Greeks. The Romans said, let's join forces with the Jews, and together we'll wipe them out. Now, the Jews had already controlled Eretz Yisrael, but when the Romans took over the Greeks, they took them over everywhere. They conquered all of the different lands that they had. This is the deal that the Romans made with the Jews. We'll always split the powers. So, Iminon Malchi, if you're going to control the federal government, Minaichu, Iminon, if we're going to control the federal government, Minaichu Haparchi, you're going to control the governorship in each of our states. So there's a balance of power. Iminaichu Malchi, if you're going to take control of the federal government, Minon Haparchi, and we'll control the regional governments. Now, Rashi tells us that this conquest, since they were fighting and there was a stalemate, they made up with the Greeks, you know what? We're not going to fight you anymore in the battlefield. We're going to fight you in court. And whoever triumphs, the other one will agree to back down. So, up until now, how did we challenge each other? With military force. Now we're going to make an argument and we're going to win with logic. And if we prove that we're right, you'll have to give in. Margolis for Evan type. If you have a margolis, which is a precious stone, but it's not nearly like a diamond, which one would we use as the base to showcase the greater item? Margolis la Evan type. Because the margolis is of lesser quality, like a margolis could be marble, Evan Tova could be a diamond. Of course, you'll have a marble stand to a diamond. What about Evan Tova v'anach? Anach is even more a very precious stone, and sometimes it's a red stone that looks like it's on fire. I don't know exactly what stone it is, but it's even fancier than a diamond. Right? Of course, Evan Tova would be le'inach. Now, what about inach and a Sefer Torah? Sefer Torah is the greatest of all things. Interesting that he was even recognized by the nations of the world. The Romans and the Greeks also realized that the Sefer Torah was the ultimate koyel. Ezim and Yasa Basel right? In the Sefer Torah. I said, so the Romans told the Greeks, now that you agree with this, that the pinnacle, the ultimate, is Torah, Imkain Anan Sefer Torah Gabon, V'Yisrael Badam. We have the Sefer Torah and the Eden with us because we created an alliance with the Jews and therefore we get to triumph. And in fact, the Yevonim gave in. They didn't fight this because they had agreed that if we could triumph in court, then we win. Hafalahu Esrin V'Shishnin. So they, I'm sorry? You're right. I apologize. A couple they won. Esrin v'shish nin, 26 years. Kami lahu b'hem nesayu by the Yisrael. They kept their deal that they'll be equal partners with the Eden. They can't veilach after 26 years. As every ruler like Parai, eventually they do away with their agreement with the Jews and they persecute them. Ishtabdu b'hu. They started working with them. Now the question is, why did they originally make the deal and why did they go back on the deal? Meikar my darish or b'sayf my darish. Meikar darish nisa v'neilecha v'elcha l'negdecha. That was, I think, when Esau was talking to Yaakov, let's go together. So they wanted to go together with the Jews. L'b'sayf darish yaver no adoni l'fnei avdoi. Yaakov told them, they said, no, you go first. You take the lead. I'll be in the back. And that's what they said, it's now time to go with that method. We're going to be Esau and you're going to stand in the back. We're going to take them. Esrin v'shish nin the kamu b'himnaisu b'hada Yisrael minolo. How do we know that in fact it was 26 years that they had a good relationship with the Jews? The Amar of Kana k'shachala Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosy. We're going to have a long story till we get this information. The Amar of Kana k'shachala Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosy. When Shmuel Rabbi Yosy got sick, shalchu lei Rebbe. They sent him, Rebbe, emar lonu shnayim v'gimel dvarim. Since you're now getting sick, tell us over Torah that you heard from your father, so we should be able to perpetuate it. Amalu, told them, 180 years before Chorban Bayis Sheni, Pashna Malchus Harashah al Yisrael. So the Romans were already subjugating the Eden for 180 years.
Father was Yosy, then Falafel.
Right.
That's what father was.
And Rabbi Chalafta was a great, okay, and so the Malchus Shah were subduing the Eden already 180 years before the Churban. Peishon 80 years before the Churban, Ad LeCharva Bayis, Gozru Tumal Eretz Amim Fal Klei Zechufas. Then Chazal said that Eretz Amim are Tomei, and there's different reasons why they might have done it, either because there was so much znus there. People would bury fetuses because they were mizana, and there could be a mace anywhere, or it was to separate Klal Yisrael from the goyim. There shouldn't be an irvav, v'akleiz chugas, and on glass. Mem shana 40 years before the Beis Hamikdash was charev, actually charev abayis. Golsos Sanhedrin, the Sanhedrin left the Lishkas Agazis. V'yoshvula b'chanus. They sat in a place called Chanus, which was in Yerushalayim, but it wasn't in the place. Could be it was even in the Harabayas, but it wasn't in its proper place. Why would they do that? Since the Bezdin didn't convene in the right place, they wouldn't be down in the knossos like Kefel and Onisimafata and all the Dine knossos. Frankly, that doesn't make sense. Dine knossos all kedaitach. Why wouldn't they down Dine knossos? You don't need to be the Beis Hamikdash in the right place of the Sanhedrin and Lishkas Agazos to pass on Dine knossos. This gentleman has a great zecher because he made a great tikkun in Klal Yisrael. Who did that? Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Shemai. It was Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. Shalmala Hill, if it wasn't for him, Nishtakvu Dine Knossos from Yisrael, we would have forgotten Dine Knossos. Frankly, what do you mean Nishtakvu? Learn them. Open up the Gemaras, discusses these subjects, and you can learn them. I mean, of course, and then they would do Mishnais. What do you mean they forgot it? Ella, it means Botlu Dine Knossos Yisrael. The Bezdin would no longer have been able to impose the fines because you need to have smicha to impose a fine such as a knas, and without smicha, you can't do that. And bedavke to bevatel smicha is what the Malchus or Shah wanted to do. That's the best way to break the chain of Klal Yisrael going on. Without smicha, we can't really go on. We don't have our batidinim anymore. Shagazu Malchus or Shah gzeira. Anyone who gives smicha, yehareg will be killed. And anyone who receives smicha, yehareg will get killed. And a city in which they do smicha, everybody in the city should get killed. And even the whole tchum around that city will be uprooted. And Mefarshim tell us they would typically have the smicha ceremonies on Shabbos. So what they would do is, so they shouldn't get caught and that they shouldn't put the whole city in danger, is they would go out of the city, but they couldn't go past the tchum. So they would go out of the city and do the ceremony there. So that's where the Romans said, anywhere in the Tchum that you'll do it, we'll destroy. So what are we going to do? It's going to break the shalshelas of smicha. Ma'aser Rabbi ben Bava halach v'yoshev ben shnei harim gedolim. He went in between two great mountains because he wanted to be in no man's land, so no one would be implicated by the Romans and be killed because he's going to do the smicha. Uvein shnei yorish gedolos vein beis tchumei Shabbos. Where was this? Bein usha l'shafram v'somach sham chamisha zakenim. And he gave smicha to 5 zakenim: Rab Meir, Rab Yehuda, Rab Yosy, Rab Shimon, Rab Elazar ben Shmuel. Rab Avi Mosif, Af Rab Nechemia. Rab Avi says it was a 6th person as well. It was Rab Nechemia. Kivan shehikiru b'hem oivim. Once the enemy found out that this is what happened, Omerlem, he told them, "Beneath my children, that is 6 people or 5 people who we gave smicha to, scatter, run away, roitzu." Omerloi Rebbe, va'atamat hayalecha. What about you? We should just leave you here to get killed? Omerlem areini muta lefneyem ke'even she'ein lahot. I'm an old man, I can't move anymore. Give up on me. You just go and save yourselves. Omer lezazu misham at shenatzu legufoi gimel meyos lulnios shalvarza. Rahman al-Flan, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was penetrated with 300 spears. The Asu Lagufoi Kikivra. His body was like a sifter, it had so many holes in it, and he was mamish Moshe Nefesh to continue the smicha so that they could continue to pass on Dina Knossos. So of course we cannot say that it was Dina Knossos because clearly they continued Dina Knossos even after they left the Lishkas Agozos. So what was the impact that we mentioned earlier, that the Bezdin moved out of the Lishkas Agozos? Because Allah is, if you don't have the Sanhedrin Agadol sitting in the Lishkas Agozos, even though you only need a Bezdin of 21, even the regional Batadinim can pass on Chayv Misos, but they could only pass on Chayv Misos when there is a presence of Bezdin in the Lishkas Agozos. Once they moved out of the Lishkas Agozos, it made it that you could no longer pass on any Din Nefashis. Why would they not want to be down on Din Nefashis? My timer, even the Chazud and the Fishalu Roitzchim, they saw that there were so many murderers, and they wouldn't be able to deal with. There are too many cases. You're only allowed to deal with 1 case a day. They wouldn't be able to deal with it. They said, "Mutav nigli mimakam lamakam," so that we can no longer paskin on Din Nefashis. There's another reason why they didn't want to do it. Is brought down is we know that a bezin that kills once in 70 years is considered a bezin shel katlonos, and they had murder trials every day. They didn't want to be such a bezin, so they shut down. You could only pass in Din Nefashis when there is the presence of a bezin of Sanhedrin sitting in the Lishkas Agozos. Malamet shamokim goyer. So Zog to Gemara, are you telling me only 180 years prior to Churban Bar Yesheni the Romans took over and not more? Vatani Rabbi Yosy b'Rebbe Tainid, Malchus Pras, the Persian Empire, b'fnei Abayis Shloishim v'Arba Shana. Rashi says, Bizman Abayis ba'oidei banu la'achar shabanu Koresh. After Koresh built the Beis Hamikdash, the Malchus of Persia continued to be in control of Yerushalayim. Nimshchu Machuso Shloishim v'Arba Shana, and then Ubaki. So the Persian Empire lasted 24 years in addition to the time where they built the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. It goes through a whole cheshbon to figure out how long before Churban Bar Yesheni the Romans were still in power. The Romans took over.